Hello everybody, welcome to CRM stage and thank you all for joining us today. Hope you will be able to find something useful and interesting for you today. So let's see what I'm prepared for you today. Okay, let's go to the slides. What is a wrapper class and how to use it in LWC, in Lightning Web Component. So this is our topic for today, and let's discuss what is a wrapper class, why and when do we need it, and let's see in a small demo how it works in LWC components in action. Okay, so my name is Oleh Mykytyn. I am Salesforce MVP from Lviv, Ukraine. I'm also running here Salesforce developer user group, and my current position is senior Salesforce developer and technical lead in Red Tech. Also, you can see here my email and Twitter details. So if you just decide to stay in contact or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Okay, following presentation may contain some forward-looking statement. So please make sure before purchasing to check what is available at the moment. So what is wrapper class? Let's see why do we need it and what is that? So in other words, it's a container or something some data or anything. So let's give it a proper meaning and explanation on it. So first of all, a wrapper class is a data structure or an abstract data type of which contains different objects or collections of objects as its members. So you can use them to group some data. Also, wrapper class is similar to a custom object, but it's an Apex class created by developer and whose instances could be different data type like primitive, collections, or objects. So developer can define what data type contains in this wrapper class. It can be some strings, some booleans, some list of other objects. It can be just one object or maps or any other collections. So let's see what benefits of wrapper class do we have and why do we need it quite often. So wrapper class can consolidate a set of different fields from multiple objects. So let's imagine that sometimes we need some grouped data from different objects, different places, and we need to iterate through it and show it in a list, for example. And here it will be very handy to use wrapper class because there you can define what data and how you would like to group it inside. So we will see this in our examples later on. Wrapper class is good approach for code reusability. So you can define some data structure and then you can use it in different parts of your program. So it's quite good and it's good way of working. Also, wrapper class is supported to be used in Lightning Web Components, Aura and Visualforce, and it helps quite often to work with your data. Wrapper class gives easier possibility to convert JSON string into object. So this one is quite important when you are building some integrations, and if you're using like REST API, there can be some JSON files which is returned from web service, and then you need to convert it into objects, and sometimes it's very difficult to do it because you need to do a lot of iterations through the string and parse it. But here, if you just prepare like structured data in wrapper classes, you can easily just deserialize it with standard methods. So it's very handy. Okay, multiple wrappers are nested, and nested classes can be used in a single Apex class. So sometimes if you like have need of your special data type, you can just create this wrapper class inside your class, and you don't need to create any additional classes. But later on we will discuss that sometimes you need to move this class out of your Apex. Okay, and provide possibility to combine different types of appropriate data. So sometimes it's quite difficult to map your data with different types. If you need to map like 4, 5 or more values in one row, it's quite easy to do it with wrapper, because sometimes maps or other collections is not very good for doing this. So it's about some benefits of wrapper classes. What we can, how can it help us? Okay, let's go next. Now let's discuss some use cases for Lightning Web Component. So here I have 3 examples. How can we use it? So for example, let's discuss first one. When we need to display a list of records, and for each line we need to have a checkbox. And at the end, when the user selects some of those checkboxes, we need to do some data action with this selected records. For example, we want to delete them, we want to update them, or we want to send them somewhere, and then we need some identifier on this data. And in this case, it's very handy to use wrapper, because we don't need this boolean to be created like in custom fields for this object, because it doesn't help us and doesn't need to be saved in database for this action. So it's only like one-time action, and it doesn't give us any value for the records. So that's why we can build a wrapper class where we can use one variable for a boolean if record is selected, and second variable will be just an object record. So it's very useful here in this example. Also, sometimes for a second example, we need to show combined data. So for example, we need to show a list of records. It can be a table as well, when we have data from 2 objects. So for example, we have contact object and we have representative role object, and sometimes we need to map our contacts with representative roles, and we want to show in each line combined data from those objects. And it's difficult to show it in another way than wrapper, because you need to do a lot of iterations, and it will be a bit difficult to show those lines. But when you build a wrapper which will contain some merged fields from one object and from another object, you will just have your special object type, which will contain fields from both objects, and just with some Apex functionality we can populate it and then show in our component. So it's very useful. And sometimes, which we already discussed about JSON string, which we are using in REST API, it's very good just to convert it into wrapper, because it will give us just few lines of code, and then you can have object data in your Apex, and then you can easily work with that in your components. So it's very helpful. We will see some examples of this during demo later. So let's go to the next slide. And the next slide is about wrapper class best practices. So in small projects, sometimes we can skip some of these, but I would recommend always try to use those as much as possible. For example, to follow coding best practices. It's always good to keep all name conventions, all positions, and just keep reusability and other features in your wrapper classes development. Also, it's very good to create a separate Apex class for your wrapper. Then it will be it can be used in other functionality. It can be reusable, and it's like much more cleaner way of doing things. Also, if you are keeping your wrapper class in your Apex class, it's recommended to move them at the end of your class. Then all wrapper classes are in the same places, and most of the time they are just keeping there. So it's easier to understand later for another developers. Also, please try to use all object-oriented principles that allow you to accomplish code reusability, because you can then reuse your class. You can use interfaces, and it helps a lot in building a very good structure and good code for a big projects. So it's very important to use these principles. Just doing this recommendation for you. Always try to keep as much unified as possible. So again, it's when you have some requirements, you can build small wrapper class, and you have another requirements for similar data, you can build another second wrapper class. But sometimes it's better just to create one, make them separate class and make it unified. So you just extend it a bit, but just name your variables very unified, and then you can use it in 2 or 3 requirements, just one wrapper class. So it will save you some code, and your project will be much more cleaner. So that's why I'm recommending also to keep them clean and good structured. So it will just help to maintain and keep your project like very good and clean structured. So this is about best practices. And now I would like to show you some small demo about wrapper classes in Lightning Web Components. So let's navigate to Visual Studio Code, and here I have some examples for you. So as you see here, I have order list Lightning Web Component. It's a small component which has just list of order items and some information from order. So here, as you see, it's just message from order. Here some order details, and here we just doing iteration based on this data that we are receiving from controller. So let's go to the controller, and then we will come back to component. So what do we have in our controller? So we have one method which is receiving order ID and which is returning wrapper class. So let's see what we have. So here we are getting some JSON example. It can be received from your integration from REST web service, which you are calling from Apex, and then it can return you something similar like this. It's a JSON file, and most of the time we need to convert it to our Salesforce like data type. Sometimes we don't need it, just don't need it to create any Salesforce metadata like objects or fields. we just want to show this in our page. So that's what we going to do. So we are just receiving JSON, and we are going just to show it in Lightning Web Components without any creation or inserting to our database. So here we have our JSON, and a bit lower we have our wrapper class. One is for response body and second one is for order type. So why do we need two of them? So basically here, if you see in JSON, we have some fields inside. So one is a status field, then message, then order ID, and this one is order items, and it's array of our order items object. So here we have fields for order items. It's a name, it's ID, it's external order ID, it's SKU, it's order date, and it can be much more. So that's why it's good to have separate object for like separate wrapper class for this object. So here, if you see, we have same name and we have same ID name, external or ID field, SKU, and order date. So they need to map to these field names. And here we have also same variables like status from here, message from here, order ID, and order items. So it should be actually order ID here. And now when we are getting this JSON, we can use JSON deserialize and to convert it in our response body. So it will be converted to this response body, and then it will be returned to our Lightning Web Component. So if we go to our JS file, here we will see that we are getting a record ID which we are passing to this get or released method, and when it's returning data for us, we are putting it into just like parsing it back and putting data to this variable. And after that we are showing it in our Lightning Web Component. So here we can show like from message what we received, we can show here ID, name, SAQ, and ordered date from another system. So let's see how it looks in Salesforce. For this demo, I created one order record and added this LWC component at this section. So we have this like name of component, and here we have some information. So here we have this information that we are showing here. So it's ID, it's a name, it's SAQ, and order date. So, and as you see, it was easy just to transfer data from another system to Salesforce, and then just convert it to wrapper class and just iterate through that wrapper class in Lightning Web Components, and then we see all this data. It's exactly the same as we have here. Name, so we have this screen name, we have this SKU, and we have order created date. So this was example for how we are using JSON deserialize and how it works together with wrapper class. So now I want to show you another small component which I built to extend current one. And if we open this controller and this component, so let's see what we have in this class. So basically, sometimes we need, as I mentioned, like during slides, that we need to map some data and show some combined fields, for example. And in this example, I want to show how we receive data from another system in JSON, but we want to add some data from our Salesforce objects, from Salesforce fields, and combine this data into one array and then show it in Lightning Web Component. So let's see. Here we have a similar component. It has also a table, but here we have a bit more data columns. So we have order item name, we have external order ID, SKU, quantity, unit price, and order data. So everything is shown from data variable, which is array, and from item record. If we go to JS file, we will see same as we had previous. So we are passing record ID of our order, and then we are receiving some data which we are iterating later. So let's see what we have in our controller. So here we see that we are receiving now list of wrappers, and at the end we see same fields as we have in our UI. So it's order item ID, or item name, and other fields. So now this means that we have consolidated data. It's combined data from our JSON which we received, and from our orders and products from Salesforce. So to do that, first we need to get order items. So we are receiving order ID from Lightning Web Component, and here we are querying all order item that we have for this order by this field. After that, we are getting our response from previous class. So you see here we have order controller type response body. So we are calling another class and class inside. So it's our type, and we are getting same response body wrapper class from this method that we used for previous component. And now we wanna do some mapping of this data. So here we are preparing a map which we just want to sort our order items by its ID. So here we have a for loop going through the order items, and after that we are just sorting them ID and record instance. It will help us just to get data of exact record when we want to map it. So a bit lower here we see that we have order wrapper list. So it's a list that we are sending to our UI, to Lightning Web Component, and we will populate this list in our next for loop. So it's here. So we are creating like instance of this wrapper, and here we are just populating those fields with data from item that we are iterating. So we are getting ID, we are getting like name via price book entry, we are getting quantity, we are getting like unit price, and all that we need. And now second part, we are getting another data from item from JSON. So here using map, we are passing our item ID to get instance of this order item. So here we have our order item and getting like SKU from that item, order date, and external order ID. So the missed data, which is not in Salesforce. So at the moment we have combined data from Salesforce and from external system. And now we are adding them to the list and returning to our Lightning Web Components. To be able to access all those variables, we need to put like our enabled annotations before each variable, and wrapper class is quite simple and looks like this. So let's go to our component looks like this. So let's see how it works in action in Salesforce. So to show this component, we need to add it to the page. So let's open Lightning App Builder. And here we have another component, or consolidate data. And let's save it. And let's go back. So now here you see we have a bit extended version of data. So we have order item name, we have external order ID from another system, which might be useful for us. We have SAQ, we have quantity from order product object, we have a unit price, we have order date from another system. So if you see, we have this orders over here. So if you open it, you will see here like list price, unit price, quantity, and this data is same as we see here. So that's why our wrapper is quite good approach here, because we combine data from different sets of data, and then we can just easy show it in our web component. So these two small examples how we can use wrapper classes, but most of the time we cannot skip and avoid them in our development. So hope this is clear, and now we are going back to our presentation. So at this moment my demo is over, and I hope it was clear enough, but I believe there might be some questions, and if you have them, so don't hesitate to reach out. We have chat available for next 1 hour, so I will be able to answer all your questions. So please reach out and let me know if you need any help or answers. And yeah, thank you all for being with us today, and hope you like it, and just stay safe and keep on doing good things. Thanks. Bye bye.